Lauren Beckett Jackson, editor of The Daily Show, as everyone can see behind you in your suite.
Trying to be subtle.
I believe this is your fifth year working on the show.
Almost fourth. Yes, we're
Okay.
close enough.
Yeah. And this season, you guys welcome back Jon Stewart part-time. So what has that been like?
Electric, I think, to say the least. We were not under the impression that he was going to be coming back. He'd had the show on Apple TV, and so we were like, "Oh, this is not happening. We're going to do this guest host thing." And the day that they announced, he came out. We had a big meeting in the studio, and everyone just kind of blew up because not only is he a legend here, obviously, but it meant that this next year was going to be something really, really special, and that everyone in the room was going to be a part of it. And so it was just really exciting to have him back, to be a mentor to a lot of the new correspondents that we have in the show. We've got some new talent this year, and then also having his voice this year in particular, being election year, it felt like right. It felt perfect. So it's been awesome to have him back, and we're really excited for what we've made so far and the next few months to come.
Yeah, sure. So how big is the Daily Show editing team?
There's a good chunk of us. There's 10 actually. One of them is primarily on our expansion team, and the other nine are focused on the show. And so we're kind of a big family bunch. We all come from different backgrounds, which makes the show, I think, a little bit better because we're always working on, over each other and getting feedback from each other and kind of helping out when somebody needs an extra hand. But it's allowed us to kind of bridge the gap between headlines and a lot of the stuff that we do in our first act with all the news clips that we're putting together. But we're also doing field pieces, we're doing sketches. So it's kind of fun to sit on the lunch line and be like, hey, what are you working on today? Because there's always something new and different. So it's a big bunch, but a good bunch.
So what is like the day-to-day workflow like, editing a live to tape talk show?
It's fun because every day is different. Like I come in and I might not know what my assignment is until I've booted up my computer. I don't have any advance notice most of the time. And so I'll come in and they'll be like, all right, Lauren, you're on the interview today, or you're on headlines today. And as soon as that first Slack message comes in, you're just going until rehearsal and then taping. So it feels very much like we're on this like constant wheel, rotating through, and you're gonna get to do 4 or 5 different things in one week, that'll air that night, which is
Mhm.
insane.
Yeah. And like a large part of your job is also being super flexible too, because you have no idea if there's going to be like last minute breaking news. So what happens when there is something happening at like 3 p.m. that you need to include tonight?
It's a quick turnaround, and I think a lot of the times because you have to remember that there's like this huge team behind us. It's not just the editors. We have a ton of producers in our tag department who are actually going through and watching breaking news that's happening, pulling sources, figuring out the best quality that we can get for this clip. Do we have a reporter saying that? All of those things are happening simultaneously when we, have a breaking news story that we want to include. Then the writers have to come in and we're going to rewrite jokes on the fly. We got to include X, Y, and Z now, and kind of getting the correspondent or our host up to speed that day. So there's just a lot of moving parts that happen at the same time, but there is an energy and a fluidity that happens when there is breaking news because we're all kind of waiting for it. And so it's an adrenaline rush essentially because you have very little time. But you get it together and you make quick cuts. There might be a few notes, but it's like we've got to get this on. So you do the best that you can in the time allotted and get it done. But it's
Hmm.
definitely a rush.
Yeah. And I have to feel like once you do like get it done and like lock it in, it's like, oh, that was great.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so
your
like
hands
hectic in the moment. Yeah.
are shaking, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, what types of segments have you worked on that have been like edited over a longer period of time, like a couple weeks that are not included on that night's show?
Yeah, totally. So our field pieces are a big proponent of the show, and they usually span about 5 to 7 minutes or so. And the most recent one that I worked on was the Eric Adams biofilm that actually aired on Tuesday night. And we had time for that. And I think also my producer, Jeff Gussa, who was kind of the brains behind this piece, had been collecting archival actually for years before we actually were able to make it. We have to go through a whole pitch process, And so he was just compiling all of this stuff that he knew one day he'd be able to make this biofilm with. And so I just jumped on the last few months to kind of get that going. And really what we end up doing is if we're doing kind of more of a long form thing, we'll get a little bit more time, but we still don't actually know when it will air, because it's often that we want to air it in the middle of a news cycle where we're referencing the subject. So we were kind of waiting for the right time, but in that moment, you have to, recognize like how much can we get done. We were going back and forth with the writers on kind of finalizing our jokes and seeing what kind of visuals we had and archival we had that would really work and make those jokes land. But doing that in a way where we could kind of stay abreast of the news cycle in case we had to, hurry up and finish it. But I love that we had some extra time to do it, because it allows you to kind of let your imagination go wild. I think that Daily Show is a format show. And so there's a lot of things that we do very routinely. But the field pieces give you a chance to kind of just run the gamut and try something new, and kind of get your gears going on something that's a little different. And so it's one of the pluses of being an editor here, is that
it feels like you can do like both types, like the immediate
exactly.
breaking news and then the long form like feature that takes a while.
Exactly.
Okay. Mhm. Well, I mean, you guys still have like rotating hosts. So what is it like editing for like each host's style?
It's fun. I think that everyone has like their own brand that they bring to the show. And so a lot of the times when we're in rehearsal, it's fun to watch. Anyone can come to rehearsal if you have time. And just like hearing how they kind of react and respond to certain jokes, kind of getting that timing down of like when we want to push into something or, take a step back. All of those things are kind of built into the type of correspondent that we have, for instance, I was working on an interview with Ronnie Chang, and he was interviewing Aquafina, and they're like friends. So they had this idea that they were going to do a bit on the interview, and it's, they were kind of going to do this kind of improvisation. And when that happens, you have to kind of be ready for anything. And so, I was kind of just like waiting to see what they were going to do, because I had no idea. We don't usually know. So they're going to be taping it, live, and then we're kind of coming back and seeing like what we can do here and there, and just knowing what kind of camera angles we have at our disposal, making sure that we kind of hold on, any props or shots or whatever. But we had like a whole walkout that Ronnie did because he wanted Aquafina to interview him, which was
Your Kung Fu Panda Force
their
co-star.
Kung Fu, yes. And so you kind of want to, give them the time to do that. And it worked out great. And it's one of those things where you just have to kind of roll with it a little bit. So like Ronnie's more of an improv person, and like that's kind of your day-to-day change with all of them. They all have their own style.
Yeah, that was fun, like having her the first half of the interview, like asking him with his like pre-written questions.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And we love that we have time to do that. And I think we ended up doing an extended interview that day,
Mhm.
just because you want to give them as much time as you want. We've actually heard feedback from guests that come on the show that they enjoy interviewing with us because we allow them to talk. It's not just like, we're not just going to promo your movie or your book or whatever. We actually just want to have a conversation with you, because we have the platform to, put the full interview on digitally, on social media, et cetera. So we have that capability. And then if we don't have the time in the linear version of the show, we can, trim that down. And that also is something that, the editors need to kind of work with to make sure it still feels seamless. But it gives them a chance to kind of relax and just to have a conversation, which I think is what, allows for a ground like the Aquafina interview, where
Yeah,
she
for sure. Well, Lauren, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you back in a little bit.
awesome. Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.